Good morning, everybody. 안녕하세요.
Wow, great.
I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for welcoming me here. This is my first time in South Korea, and I'm having so much fun. So forgive me if I can only say 감사합니다 and a couple other words. But I was invited by the Notion team to talk with you all here about how the creator economy and the world of content creation can intersect with all the things that we do in the Notion community here. I also want to say just how impressed I am with how hard the Korean community goes. Like, I've seen the textbooks up there that people are writing about Notion, the games people are building around Notion with pixel art and everything. So I don't think that I'm going to be saying anything in this talk that any of you don't already know, but hopefully I can tell a story or two that will help to illustrate and just make things a bit more concrete. So the talk I've prepared for you today, I'm just calling a little bit humbly, how to get 1 million people to care about your Notion product. That could be a YouTube channel you're building where you're teaching people Notion, like what I do. It could be templates that you're creating. It could be community events that you're building or consulting that you're offering companies. And I just want to tell at least one story from my experience that has helped me to use my experience in making videos and creating content to get people interested in Notion and to build a sustainable business. So if any of you have not seen my content online before, by way of a little bit of introduction, I have a channel called Thomas Frank Explains on YouTube. I named it that because I'm not good at naming things. So my parents gave me a name and I just keep using that name for everything. I'm not creative enough to come up with a fun name for my business, so this is what I do. I just make videos with my face on them. But I use this channel to teach people anything and everything about Notion. So that could be the basics of what a block is. It's like Legos for the internet. Or it could be the things that I personally find a little bit more interesting, which are the more detailed aspects of Notion. I like to get into the complex things, like the Notion API. Has anybody here worked with the API at all before? We have at least a couple of hands. The API is a pretty deep part of Notion, but I made a 2-hour-long video teaching people how to use the API by building Pokédex, which was really fun. I like that kind of stuff. And I also like Notion formulas. I spent 4 months a few years ago writing full documentation for every single formula function on my website. This one actually just came out. Splice is brand new in Notion as of like 2 days ago. And I wrote this article when I was supposed to be writing this talk. So I got the talk done, luckily, and I got the article done. But what I've realized in my 12 years now of making internet videos and, I don't know, being a goofball on the internet is this kind of stuff, the really detailed work, the really complex topics at the bottom layer of Notion, this isn't what my audience is going to initially be excited about. I have to work pretty hard to get people interested in this kind of content, at least at first. So, what I hope to share with you all today is something that I think you can apply no matter what you're doing. Whether it's making YouTube videos, whether it is building templates, maybe even building your own apps and tools that work with Notion, or maybe just even consulting. I'm hoping to share one lesson that I've learned time and time again from all of the videos that I've made and all of the people who are even better than me at making content so that we can get people interested in this kind of stuff that we are passionate about. It's also a lesson that I need to constantly remind myself about. So I'm going to use this talk as a little bit of a self-reminder for me, and hopefully I can share it with you. So the story that I want to tell you begins right when I got married to my lovely wife, Anna. This is us about 2 months before our honeymoon. We had a trip before the honeymoon for her 30th birthday, and then we went on the actual honeymoon. So this was 2022, and at this time in my life, I had 2 major goals or things on my mind, one of which was getting married. Luckily, she said yes, so that one worked well. The other one was a sort of technical problem that I had been wrestling with for a very long time. I get so many ideas all the time, in the shower, while out on a walk with my dog, while on a really long bike ride. I get ideas for videos. I get ideas for things I want to build. And so I'm constantly grabbing my phone, which I would hold and show to you, but I have 2 things in my hands already. I'm constantly grabbing my phone and I'm recording voice notes. I have hundreds and hundreds of voice notes just buried in my phone. And you know what? I'm never going to listen to them again. But I wanted to get the ideas out of those voice recordings and get them into Notion, where I actually review things. And this was 3 years ago, so we didn't really have easy tools to do this. So this is kind of what I wanted. This is actually the first version of this talk that you're listening to right now. The way that I write my talks is I pull out my phone and I start talking to my phone, and eventually I get something like this. Now today, this is really easy for us to do. We have AI meeting notes block. You just type /AI, it's the first thing you see, and Notion can record your voice. But 3 years ago, this didn't exist. And any of the tools out there that I was using, or at least that I tried to record my voice and turn them into text, they had some sort of flaw or some sort of final missing piece. They wouldn't work with Notion, or it just didn't work very well. So I started trying to build this myself. And at the time, I didn't know how to code, I didn't know any programming languages, so I was just trying to put together a bunch of no-code apps, like Zapier and Dropbox, and I had a whole bunch of things I tried. I was never really satisfied. So the reason I bring up me getting married is while my wife, Anna, and I were at the airport, about to go off to our honeymoon, I'm in the line for coffee, I'm just scrolling a blog post from a guy who's like, hey, I like podcasts, but I like to read podcasts. So I've written all this code that takes podcast episodes that I'm interested in, and it turns them into text. And I'm looking at all this code going, whoa, I don't understand any of this. But if I can learn how to use this, I will be able to, I think, turn my voice notes into text. If he can do it with podcast episodes, then I can do it with my voice memos. I just have to learn. So I start learning JavaScript. I start with a beginner course, start learning a bit more and more, and then eventually I get something that works. And I realize that it's fun to build something that works. So once I get it working, I don't stop there. I keep adding features. I keep asking myself, I wonder if I could make it work for like an hour-long voice recording. And I run into problems there, and I solve those problems. And eventually, I end up writing so much code. I actually wrote a 6,000-line JavaScript library that just makes the Notion API work better with the code that I wrote. This isn't even the code for the voice thing. It's a whole different thing. And I eventually realized that this is what I enjoy doing all day long. If I get to wake up and I get to solve some little tiny problem and I get to work through the steps in my mind and use logic and learn something new, I've had a great day. But what I've also realized from making YouTube videos for over 10 years is this is not what people are going to click on, and it's not what's going to get people interested in learning something new. I have to find a way to bridge the gap. And luckily, I did already know this, so I at least knew how to build my YouTube video. I wanted to make a video teaching people how to do the same thing that I did. Here is how we can take voice notes and turn them into Notion notes with AI and with Notion. This was actually the first version of the thumbnail that I created for that YouTube video. And this version of the thumbnail actually never went up on YouTube because I had made the whole video, I had made this thumbnail, and before I decided to post it, I said, hey, why don't I go and just ask a few of my other YouTuber friends what they think of this thumbnail? So I posted it in this Slack group that we all have, and I will never forget what my friend Dave said. He said, Thomas, you talk about Notion all day long. I don't care about Notion. But if you tell me that I can just ramble into my phone and I can get everything I said as a text note, I'm interested because I literally employ somebody full-time to follow me around all day long and do this for me. So I'm interested. And then another friend of mine put it even more clearly. He asked me, don't you think that there are people out there in the world who want to do this, who want to do the same thing you're doing, go for a long walk with their dog, and get an idea out of their brain, not lose it, and have it waiting for them in text later on, but people who don't already know that Notion exists? Why are you putting the tool they need to use in the thumbnail if there's people who don't even know they need to use that tool, but they are interested in what it could do for them? And that made a lot of sense. When I thought through the video I was making, I realized we're using several different tools, not just ChatGPT, not just Notion. We're also using Pipedream as the API connector. We're using a bunch of JavaScript code that I've written. Why don't I have the JavaScript logo in that thumbnail? Why don't I have the Pipedream logo in that thumbnail? Well, intuitively, I knew those tools aren't very popular, so I shouldn't talk about them. But this is a solution that so many people are interested in that actually using Notion in the thumbnail might disqualify their interest if they've never heard of it before. So, using their feedback, we workshopped a whole bunch of thumbnail ideas here. I went through this idea of using memes that I eventually abandoned, and then we get to this bottom row where I'm sort of honing in on this final concept, which was this: how I use AI to take perfect notes without typing. And so this title plus this thumbnail kind of creates this curiosity gap. How do you take perfect notes without typing? And that's what earns the click. Namely, that's what earns 1 million clicks and eventually gets 1 million people interested in the Notion project that I've built. So this here is the lesson that I want to share with you. When we're trying to get people interested in the Notion educational content we're creating, videos we're creating, community meetups we're creating, or we're trying to get people to be interested in, say, the templates that we're building on top of Notion, or maybe even full-blown apps on top of Notion, like the web clipper that my team and I are building, we don't want to start with the tool. We want to start with what our audience is already interested in. And then we build a gap, or we build a bridge to bridge the gap between that area of interest that already exists and where we want to guide people. You have to start with what your audience already wants. I've been reading this very old book on marketing. It's called Breakthrough Advertising. It was written in 1966. I don't know why, but for some reason you have to pay $100 to get this book. It is good, and there's one sentence, which I'm not going to be able to quote perfectly, but one sentence from that book that sticks in my mind. He's talking about advertisers and copywriters when he writes this sentence, but I think it applies to all of us, especially if we're educators, but really anybody who's trying to make connections with other people. He said that as copywriters, your job is not to create desire. You can't create desire. Desire already exists in the market. The job of a copywriter, the job of an advertiser, and I would argue the job of an educator or anybody who's trying to make connections is to harness that existing desire and to use it to guide people to where you want them to be. Again, you have to build the bridge between desire that already exists and to what you have created. And if you can do that, you'll bring so many more people in, and they'll be so much more receptive to anything that you're building. Thank you so much.